Welcome to the TechIsland podcast powered by Payabl. My name is Tanya Romanyukha. I'm General Manager of TechIsland and I'm an expat who chose Cyprus to live and work.
And I'm Artemis Pnevmatikou. I am the head of PR and communications at TechIsland. I'm a local who left and then came back.
Together at this podcast, we reflect what TechIsland is all about. Locals and experts working together to transform Cyprus into a tech hub. Through this podcast, we explore what exactly TechIsland means, what impact it has on our daily lives.
And today we are at Payabl's offices once again, and we're talking about something that affects everyone, AI. It's the trend of the millennial, let's say, maybe. And we're very lucky to have with us three guests who are, each of them is working in different areas of this change. So first of all, Mr. Demetris Skourides, the Chief Scientist of the Republic of Cyprus, leading the country's national research, innovation, and AI strategy.
Thank you for having me.
Thekla Paschali, the CTO of payabl, one of the biggest fintech companies in Cyprus.
Indeed. Thank you for being here with you guys.
And Sysoev is Chief AI Officer and Advisor to technology companies and beyond.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's amazing to have you all here. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I love all the conversations separately with you guys. Now we have this mixed together, so I envision that it would be a fantastic conversation. First of all, just to kick off this talk, I'd love to ask, what is the common popular misconception you hear about AI and you wish people to stop repeating? Who wants to start?
I can start. I think the most basic one is that AI will replace everything. Us, work, everything in the world. So it's one of the misconceptions that we need to leave aside and embrace what is coming and evolve with AI.
For me, I think the biggest misconception is people assume that AI thinks like a human and is able to read between the lines and understand our intentions. In fact, let's say I'm of the stochastic parrot belief system. I do not believe that AI is super intelligent, at least where we are at the moment. Ask me again in 5 to 10 years. But I think that AI is truly a skill that we need to learn to live with and learn to use to actually be effective and efficient.
I actually would agree with both the lady and the gentleman. I think that one of the misconceptions is that AI is everything. And then I think that people also don't understand that AI is just another language, in simple terms, that if you can learn how to use it, you can actually use it appropriately. So going back to the premise that if you don't understand that it isn't everything, you can't understand how to harness it. And I think the opportunity stems into people investing the time to understand how to use this technology. So I think the misconception of thinking that by default AI is ChatGPT or AI is Copilot or AI is Gemini and it knows everything is a misconception.
So how should we be using it? Tell us, since you...
Well, first of all, I'm a big advocate of AI being, for example, an assistive technology to help humans, I think achieve more. I'll start by sharing, I think, 2 statistics that are worth sharing. Since 2004 to today, we've actually increased, the number of data that we have has increased more than 18,000 times. So when you start thinking that you have an increase of more 18,000 times of data, and you still have 8 hours in a day that people are supposed to work, and you still have 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, right? You start realizing that the amount of data is exploding, but the amount of time that we have to get the job done is not changing. So leveraging and harnessing a technology that can help us humans create value is very important. And I would say that organizations, depending on their nature, their industry, what they do, and also humans who serve them, need to understand how can I use this piece of technology to create value and to capture value. So, example, administrators or let's say personal assistants or executive assistants are all worried about how AI can really do most of the things they do. Changing the mindset to think that you're no longer supposed to read 2,000 emails in a day, but you can become the best workplace orchestrator that enables the executives you work with, right, to be more productive, is a change of mindset. So I think that this changing mindset comes with the opportunity to identify where you can create value, where you can capture that value. And I think that this mindset helps us really focus on things that I would call unlocking trapped value. There's so much trapped value that's there, right, that we don't think about. And I think if we can really think of how we can use this technology in that way, it really breaks down that misconception, because it isn't for everything, but if we use it in a way, we can create value.
Ivan, what do you think?
So I think that in the current day and age, we're slowly stepping away from generative AI, which rose into popularity and into the public eye in around 2023. Now it's 2025, and we have almost exhausted collectively as a society the most popular applications of where specifically generative AI can give us this unlocked potential that is missing without it. And lots of publications actually recently are showing that as we're moving away from generative AI into agentic AI, we're also making steps away from extremely large language models to smaller and smaller language models, which simply act as specific parts of, let's say, the brain of the operation that are controlling mini processes within an organization, within a team, that then deliver information either to a human, if it's a complex process, or to an orchestrator, large language model, which then, let's say, delegates tasks back and forth and collects feedback from those small models. So this is partly the new way of thinking that breaks the misconception that the AI models need to get larger and larger and more complicated and remember more and more and more things. We're actually seeing that when we pinpoint these smart models to specific tasks that they are trained and designed to do, when we create a network spanning an entire organization or educational institution, or even within our own daily lives, part of our day-to-day things that we are doing, we're seeing a lot more benefit than just relying on one extremely large model that we expect to be an expert in everything and anything.
Can you please explain to our audience Gen AI, Gentech AI? What does it mean? How does it differ? Large language models, smaller,
Of course.
a bit of terminology.
Here we go. Get your coffee, get your cigarette. So we know that from the beginning, AI models in general are modeled around the neuron, right? That's why they're called the neural networks. And as we know, human brains have a lot of neurons inside of it. So using this assumption, when we start building AI models, we keep adding more and more and more neurons to it. Now, when we specialize in the world, in the umbrella term of AI, into language models, models which modeled, for lack of a better word, language, sentences, speech, reasoning, we create large language models of many interconnected neurons, which parse encoded human language mathematically, and for a very simplified term, predict the next sequence of words. It doesn't work exactly this way, but this is enough to understand the basic general knowledge. This is a generative AI. It generates text. It generates, in some cases, images. It generates video. It generates sound. Whatever it is, it just generates the next thing. Agentic is like, definition comes from the word agency. It has an ability to do something. It has an agency to make an action. So agentic models have a component of a generative neural network inside of it that controls a process. So for example, in the case of writing emails, a generative model will write you the text of the email based on your communication style, the previous email thread, everything that it knows about you. And then the agentic neural network is going to be able to not only write it, but then send it off, or maybe even find the correct list of people to add to the to field CC, BCC, etc. So this is the kind of idea in which agentic models don't need to be as large because they're trained on one action.
So it's not only helps you to think, but it also does instead of you.
Correct.
Okay, Thekla, I'm interested in this practical use because we've heard now both examples with emails and you're leading AI transformation within the company, within big company, with a company with complex structures, procedures, licenses, whatever. I can imagine that there are many employees who use different agents, models for their own use. How do you combine this all? How do you roll out this transformation? How it all combined in the company, this practical
Look,
use?
AI change in a company is difficult. First, you need to identify your pain points. Yeah, so we cannot create a unicorn. What Ivan was trying to say, with the complex to do, understand, be able to understand the whole business things and everything. So as a company, first what we did is a gap analysis, understand our pain points, our operations, what is needed either internally but also externally for our customers to improve latency, to improve fast responses, to be more accurate on responses and everything. So first we need to understand and identify the specific needs that we have, because when you go on specifics and you find a tool, an assistant, as I say, because AI is an assistant for us, employees and everyone, will be easier to train and have better results, rather a unicorn that you just have there and does everything for you. Then it's really difficult to identify, write emails, schedule calendars, understand business, understand licenses, understand legal, understand compliance, understand internal processes, external processes. So we are more focusing on specifics, specific tools and AI assistants, agents, or tools that will help us speed up. So it's also the business goal of what we want. So business wants to improve, business wants to evolve, business wants to improve internally to be able to help externally our clients and merchants, and also what our merchants is needed. What do they need? What is the next steps in the market, in the industry that we should focus and use AI to speed up, to catch up, or even be ahead of it if possible.
Ivan, and you are coming to companies as a consultant, so you see different cases, and you come when sometimes different departments already created something for them, already see some benefits and pitfalls, and maybe they have even their own agents. So how do you combine this all, and do you create specific agents which can do the work and automate part of the processes, or how do you design it and combine something what is already existing in the ecosystem of that?
This is a great question. It's very complicated, I will be honest with you, because any company is a living, breathing organism. Things change, things evolve all the time. Some things are in the light, some things are in the shadow. Especially more in the shadow, the larger the company grows. So in these terms, the most important part of AI transformation, definitely, and I will tag on and steal from you what you said, gap analysis, is the audit of the processes. Even though it's called AI transformation, it is so much more, because what I'm noticing more and more is that once you start analyzing a company's operational processes and systems through the lens of optimization for speed, for accuracy and everything, in the lens of AI, you also start to find interesting gaps which AI cannot solve, but without looking at these processes through the lens of what can AI do, you would have never discovered certain inefficiencies, miscommunications between departments, sometimes even human friction between departments. You would have never discovered this without thinking about very high-level operational efficiency auditing. So specifically to your question, when there is already, in whatever company there is, some way done already, some AI agents or models being integrated or anything, this is for me an incredible opportunity to find my, what I call avatars. So these are the people in change management. You need to, in order to create lasting change in the way that people work, You need to find internally amazing people who are already halfway there. They just need help to take the last step into, the light, into the next level of thinking, push them that way and give them the platform to speak, to share, to say what worked for them, what didn't work, what mistakes they learned along the way. And once these people start sharing and showing their results, all of a sudden everybody, or the majority of the people in the company, want to jump on the same process of working as well. So I very, very much always welcome if there's already some work being done, to bring it to the forefront as much as possible, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not exactly right. Still, any step is better than no step.
Indeed. Demetris, we're talking how difficult AI transformation within company. I can't imagine how is this happening on the governmental level. I mean, we recently had in our podcast Deputy Minister Nicodemus Demiano. He brought us a little bit insights about digital transformation, but you're leading national AI task force. Is it your avatars, as Ivan said? I mean, who are these kind of ambassadors of AI transformation, and how is this happening on the governmental level? What is this AI task force, and how do you roll out AI transformation of entire country?
Well, I think that's a very nice question. Let me start saying that, I mean, to get nationwide a transformation on AI, you don't just need avatars. You need too many actors, right? I mean, enough to create, villages and cities. But we started with a very simple philosophy: is most companies and most transformation projects that embrace AI, even at national levels, have often failed because people have underestimated the I would call the internal dynamics between public sector, private sector, interdepartmental complexities that may exist, for example, at ministries, and also then the ambition of what technology can bring. So one of the pitfalls that we have often seen with digital transformation or digitization is that people, instead of really using digital technology to really make something that can really add more value, is they are digitizing the processes that they had before, right? So you go from manual process to digital process and you don't create new value. So in doing this, the thinking process that I've seen throughout my career work at a global level is bringing together the parts of the ecosystem that create the value. And for Cyprus, right, a nation where we have very good excellence and strong excellence around research. We have a very I think progressive private industry that is moving fast. I think we all know that 14% of our GDP comes from ICT type of services, and it's growing at 17%. And then you have the public sector that has its own characteristics, a combination, let's say, or a mix of different technologies. You have to bring all these three together. You have to think about the change management, and then you also have to think about the future, because AI is a technology that is moving so fast that what you see today will not be probably, I think, the current level where we will be at in 5 years' time. So it's also, not really going on to something that today is impossible to catch, because in 5 years' time this is already going to be behind. So bringing all of these together, the vision was to build, a very strong team of people who are experts in each of the domain areas that would bring this necessary, this different type of vantage view, right? That would really challenge each other to come up with a strategy that doesn't just pave the way for tomorrow, which is a year's time, but it sets the basis for the foundation to look beyond the 5 years. And I think that's why you see the different types of members in the task force. So building on that, when we started looking at the previous strategy which we had, which was 2020 to 2025, we realized what worked, what didn't work, and we really looked at, what are the gaps moving forward. And in undertaking the, let's say, the challenge, we had different team leads that were appointed internally by the team to lead one of the 5 working groups. So the one working group was what types of research areas should we focus on to make sure that we generate something of value in the short term, the midterm, and the long term. And this is very important because, as you know, AI is a transformative force across horizontal. It's not just in fintech. It's not just in it's everywhere. So when you think about the community that we have in Cyprus that is producing a lot of value for our nation, I mean, we have 3,500 researchers, right? If 3,500 researchers decide today that we're going to stop researching what we're doing and we're all going to go to do AI, that is a question. That's good, right? But what are we going to do with 3,500 researchers that go in that area? Because then you also have to reflect and say, what is the research capacity that I need as a country for me to move towards my vision? Then we had a working group that basically was focused on really understanding the industries of Cyprus that can be actually that are impacted, and then how they change, and also looking at the ministries in terms of identifying needs. Why this is important? It was important because when you look at the numbers, you look at Cyprus being an economy that is, I think, 88% a service economy, and you realize that if we underestimate the amount of impact that AI can actually bring into a specific industry, right? That could be detrimental, right? So, I mean, in Cyprus, we look at, I think areas that are, dependent a lot on legal management, on the lawyers, on, CFOs and financial offices, financial services. You see education, you see all of these areas have specific use cases where AI could be a disruptive force. So before you let that disruption disrupt you, you have to think as to how do I help the people or that industry adopt this technology in a safe way, right? Because of course, I mean, people talk about autonomous finance, but what are we going to do? We're going to let an autonomous pilot plan the budgeting cycle of a company, right? See, so these are all sorts of dangers, and these things are also very important because they can actually help us create that roadmap, and that roadmap eventually helps us understand how do we chart the road forward for moving ahead. So Ivan talked about something before that is very, very important. Most people think that AI is ChatGPT. AI isn't ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a Gen AI, let's say, tool, but it does so many things that are, seem in Greek we call the word pandognostis, right? So, but right, ChatGPT isn't the right tool for a doctor. It isn't the right tool for as a surgeon. It isn't the right tool, for example, for many other types of professions. So being able to understand which tool is more applicable and how these tools can actually be part of a tool bag that will help take away the complexity, right, that we feel every day in our life in interacting with the businesses, with, for example, the government, is something that we're looking at. So imagine, right, that ChatGPT, that Gen AI, for example, or AI can actually give us the possibility for us to have this personalized service. You log in on your mobile app in 5 years' time, right, and it says, hey, Demetris, your USA visa is expired. You need to renew it. Mm-hmm. Renew. Click. By the way, you've got 3 speeding tickets, right? If you don't pay them today, in 10 days' time, you're going to actually have to go to court. Click, right? Now, these type of services, right, tailored towards a user can really have that complete control. That frictionless service can come with technologies that AI, because they can actually start understanding and personalize that service on a specific person. And at the same time, you can also offer that to companies. So imagine that in 5 years' time, or let's say after that, if we implement the right use cases and if we look at the right technology, a company that has a workforce, maybe 10% are foreigners that need visas renewed, instead of having, somebody who's going to have 10 different, 10 different, I would say, instances that they're looking at with the other department as to renewing a visa, they could say renew, and basically that complexity could be handled, right, by artificial intelligence. Now, the question mark is, how do you go from here to there? The second example I said that, that orchestration of multiple cases could eventually happen in 5 years' time with something called agentic AI, right? In 5 years' time. But today, right, before you get there, you need to prepare all of these different areas that are the necessary components, and that is what Working Group 4 does for us. Working Group 4 in our national task force looks at the actual infrastructure that needs to be built for us to be able to safely pave the way to go to that area that we're talking about, right? And that, takes into consideration the infrastructure, the power that we may need, the data, the preparation for us to be able to defend all of these AI models that will be built against cyber warfare attacks, etc., right? Because all of a sudden you realize that machines are learning, right? But we don't talk very often about how to teach them to unlearn what they've learned if it's wrong. So all of these, right, needs to be designed and looked at from a grand scale of things so that you can actually be able to have those corrective measures in place that would really help, right, create a fair environment, a safe environment, a secure environment, a transparent environment, an environment which is not biased. So, and these are where you think about areas as, do I use what's readily available because I have a model coming from a big corporation and I just adopt it and I just tailor it to the Cypriot market? Yes, but if you are in healthcare, if you actually take something like that as a default moment, you realize that you may also be taking a lot of data that's biased. We know, for example, that healthcare data are more men in the sample than there are women. So that means that you have this area. So this is the area there. Working group number 3 is a very important group for us, and I think it's all about the workforce of the future, the change management, and the workplace. And that's where you understand that AI is very different for public servants. It's very different for CFOs and accountants. It's very different for lawyers. It's very different, for example, for the average, let's say, pensioner. And one day my mom asked me, and she says, "Hey, son, what is this thing called ChatGPT? Everybody talks about it. Is it some?" I said to her, "It's your best friend." She says, "Really? What can it do?" I said to her, "Do you know that this level of this dish is actually done by different cuisines?" So she said to me, "What do you mean?" I said to her, "Well, you know what? You think that you invented souffle, but souffle exists in Italian. There's various different versions that. So I showed her how to use it, and a week later, I had a very interesting discussion with my parents. I walk in and my dad says to me, "Do you know that your mom knows everything right now?" I said to her, "What do you mean?" She says, "Do you know that every time I tell her something, she knows 10 questions to ask me to verify what I told her is correct?" And then I said to my mom, "So did you actually, cook that Japanese dish by asking, the recipe, Thermomix?" She says, "No, ChatGPT can do it." So a week later, right? We have some help at home, and I actually was very pleased to see that my mom was using a tool to be able to translate from Greek to Nepali to any other language. And I see that, this level of facilitation for, I think, our pensioners could be very helpful because that technology has that amount of small complexity that can help you. So concluding, right, the last piece of work group 5 is all about the type of legal, let's say, challenges, the type of, solutions that could come to help us, right, create this competitive advantage for Cyprus. So these 5 areas are the work that we're doing. We are basically having a target early November to basically have the final document of the strategy in a draft mode to actually look at it with the deputy minister and eventually come out, to our audience, right, to basically bringing it for a consultation phase before we take it by the end of the year to ratify that adoption. But what we're not doing is we're not just saying that this is the Bible and it's finished. We're building in it all of this mechanisms that will allow us all together as a country, right, to be able to slowly start adopting this technology.
Amazing. So, okay, you've mentioned quite a lot, and I want to take all of this and ask you about the future a little bit and what it looks like, in the sense of we are using ChatGPT a lot, which is the generative AI. I'm sure that soon everybody will be using agents, let's say. Are we going to be using AI too much that we stop thinking by ourselves? Thekla?
I can tell you. I mean, look, an example that I'm always giving. When calculators came to our life, everybody was outside on the road saying that we will stop thinking, kids will not think any of mathematics anymore. But now we cannot live without calculators even for the basic things. Does this mean that we stopped thinking? No. It means that we evolved. We can think and solve more complex things, and we use the help of calculator for the simple things. So what I think is the same with AI. We're going to use AI for the simple things, for the day-to-day struggles to solve, and for us to evolve as humans and be able to solve more complex things, to solve more complex problems out there. And even of our life, for sure, it's going to change. It doesn't mean that we will stop thinking, but we might think more things and more complex things because we have somebody to solve our simple things that AI can do for us.
So in this case, Ivan, I'm going to ask you, who do you think should start thinking of a new vocation, of a new profession, let's say, and which jobs do you think are going to disappear, and what kind of new jobs do you expect?
This is a very good question that I would say anybody who claims to know the answer to this question is lying to you.
You know, every time I ask this question, everybody says the same thing. I get no answer to that.
I will tell you the way I'm thinking to try to convince you of my case. At the moment, and this is true for any generation or any, let's say, time period of our humanity, we as a society tend to view large changes in the way that we live from the statistical term ceteris paribus. This means all things remaining equal. So when we try to measure this, how these things are going to go into the future, we imagine a world where everything stays the same, but AI just consumes something or it grows out of proportion, whatever it is. The reality is that society, the job market, our personalities, everything is so immensely complicated and only exists in a cohesive system that bounces feedback off of each other non-stop, constantly. This kind of system in mathematics is called chaos, literally the chaos theory. We cannot predict how one small change in the way that society functions will go down 1 month from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. It's impossible. We will adapt, we will overcome, we will learn. So to tie into the general discussion that we are having, yes, we no longer learn the times table until 30, 40, 50. We no longer learn specific tricks of how to divide, do long division in our heads, everybody in the school. However, we see that some people still do it. There are even school competitions you can see where they're learning techniques on their hands to do very quick division and multiplication. These skills still exist out there and they're still applied, but we consider it to be legacy skills. They're no longer necessary for everyday life. We were able to free up this time and this brain capacity to think about wider, bigger things. We have time to talk about art and discuss about theater and discuss about music, whatever it is, instead of taking time to only think about how we can solve our today's task. Now, what's going to change, in my opinion, definitely, is the mechanisms with which we approach critical thinking in general. So this ties back into education. Education is extremely practical. Education is about memorization. We're seeing this in schools and universities. There is a large part of critical thinking. However, still, certain subjects, especially, let's say, humanitarian subjects, are about memorization or processes of thinking that are able to link memorized facts together to make some kind of distinctions. Law, history, all of these subjects. Now, with AI, we are slowly getting to the point where we no longer need to be walking libraries of information. We no longer need to remember a lot of things. Even with recently augmented reality glasses. I'm sure you've seen the disastrous presentation by Mark Zuckerberg where the demo went all wrong, but we will be able to just be wearing devices on us, which will give us any information in context at the moment, whenever we need it, without having to remember or recall it. Now, this is kind of a memory task that might be going away into AI. How this will affect specific jobs, I'm not certain, because in this case, you can draw parallels, like I said before, lawyers, historians, etc. This is not something that we can entrust into AI. And this is another particular example in which I am very grateful to be living in the European Union, which has passed the EU AI Act. This takes me back to the GDPR era, where the private sector was absolutely distraught about what's going to be happening with data, how we're going to be storing it, etc. But we have to remember, beyond us being employees, we're also citizens, we're people. GDPR protected our data. And yes, we did adapt to it. And we're still working, and the companies are still functioning, and our data is protected. The same thing is about AI. AI will be helping us in our day-to-day jobs, but it will not replace us entirely. Now, will we see a strong effect on young people? Definitely. We're already seeing that fresh university graduates are having real big trouble finding entry-level jobs. Why? Because a middle-level employee, with the help of an AI agent, bot, whatever it is you want to say, is able to cover all of the responsibilities and tasks that a junior would be taking, or if not everything, at least 80%. Now, this is something complex that I'm sure is a much bigger conversation than for today, but I would say that instead of pointing a finger to specific professions, I would like to maybe say some words of warning for young people. AI skills are quintessential. They are really absolutely necessary. And having lots of conversations with educators, whether in universities or schools, there is a complex procedure now that they don't know how to involve AI into academic curriculum. We have to figure out the solution to this problem soon, before we have this early, let's say, entry-level job market crash of people not being able to find jobs straight out of university.
This is indeed a very important topic which you raised, education and entry-level workforce. And Demetris, you also mentioned the mindset changed. And indeed, I like the idea overall that this mindset change of creating value and thinking how AI cannot just replace what we do to do it faster, whatever, more efficient, but how it can generate more value into our daily life, business outcomes, whatever. So reflecting on what Ivan said about the education system is and the early, let's say, junior level workforce, is this is something what AI task force also thinking about, strategizing how this will affect education system, how we will continue, do we need to cancel kind of or reimagine this memorization part of the skills? Do we really still need to learn that much information if it all will be in our hands and seconds available? What is your thought about it?
So thank you very much. I think I will try to draw a parallel between the two questions and answering what you've just asked me. Let me just say that, when we go back to the 50s and we look at, I think 70 years later, right? 80% of the jobs we have today did not exist then. And then we just introduced what we called calculators, eventually Excel sheets, right? So that goes back to what Thekla said, is that technology is an enabler, right? It could be a disruptive force, but I think now the challenge we have in front of us with technologies like artificial intelligence is how do we harness this technology in a way that it helps us create more values together, like human plus AI, not human or AI, right? And I think that is one of the mindset changes. Then I go back to I think the concept of, first of all, the fear that AI will take my job, or that what's in it for the future. There was a piece that was actually written in Philadelphia's about where I talked about 20 new jobs of the future that are coming, right? But what I also want to say to people is that today, when we think about technology, we always think about the technology doing the job that I do today, right? And I will take the pizza analogy. If you just have a pizza which is 8 pieces, you will always feed 8 pieces. 8 pieces, maximum 1 piece per person. But if you say to humans that together, using this technology, we can create more value, and this 8 pizza becomes a 20 piece pizza, then you actually have 12 more pieces that can actually generate more value to the people who are working. This is why you see that all of the consultants, the McKinseys, the PwCs, and everyone says that those people who have AI skills will actually be worth more, 20 to 40% more, right? And those people who don't have the skills may be replaced by those who have the skills that harness this technology. So I think this mindset that this technology gives me a superpower that I can actually, be more competitive is a helping area, and it's that change of mindset. So before I go to the education part, I'll tell you. Do you remember that series called Doctor House?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be good if every doctor in any part of the world had Dr. House in his pocket?
Of course.
Of course, exactly. So that's what Ivan said before, is that we no longer need to memorize everything by heart if we can trust that the information that is coming to us is correct, is unbiased, it's non-manipulated, etc. And that basically allows us to shift our attention from memory to creation of that value. So at the task force level, not spoiling, I think, too much before the actual document is out, I can say that yes, we have actually been preoccupied extensively about how AI needs, how the and total education system. And when we say education, it's not just what you do in high school, what you do in university. It's also what you do post when you actually come back, right? And what we've identified is that we need to switch from this mentality that I've learned something, I go to the diploma and it's finished, to start embracing what we call lifelong learning, right? And that lifelong learning comes back to the point saying that this continuous evolution slowly helps you improve, right? And get this skill set that is important, because then technology will complement what you bring together. And that's what we are envisioning, right? And we're looking at right now is how will AI change the life of the CFO, right? How will AI change the life of the lawyer? How does this change the life of the citizen? Because remember, if you as a citizen could use help by a tool that can help you write a better letter, right? That would make it much easier for you to make a complaint, right? If you could actually use a tool that could help you make a translation, right? That could really help you communicate much better. So imagine that not every person right now knows that there is a technology called Google Lens. When you look at a completely different language and there is no English and you cannot see where is the English button, you just click it there and it translates it for you. So what we're saying is that the way we're approaching the strategy is by having the human in the center, or human augmented, let's say, a strategy, which means that we want the person to be in the center. We want basically technology to be an enabling force. And what we're looking at is how do we bring all of this across, both to the public, both to the private, both to the communities that are our pensioners who are basically retired, our disabled communities who basically sometimes may not have all of that information available, right? You may have, imagine that in 5 or to 10 years' time, we may want to have an elder who doesn't have a good eyesight, and he can't communicate because he doesn't know how to navigate. He can't even read, right? Why not be able to give him that voice-assisted technology? But this doesn't happen overnight. That's why we said that, before you can go from this spot to that spot, you need to really create the bridges that you can have us go through the different cycles, bridge by bridge, right? Have humans go safely here, build that trust, that capability, and then move. Because these assisted technologies, they also have risks. They also have dangers, right? And they also have those type of elements in that could be, I think, disruptive. And when we look at, for example, I've seen many children out there that have this technology, and they can use their best friend to give them an answer, right? And I said to a parent the other day who asked me if it's normal. I said, well, you have to teach them that it's okay not to have the answer today. You can, it doesn't mean that because ChatGPT will give you an answer that it's the right answer. You have to go back and really infuse into the younger generations that you need to think, you need to reflect, you need to really assess, you need to go back and really say, is this true, right? I mean, and I'll give you a very simple example. This was actually 4 years ago, an interaction I had with a young man, a young boy, 15 years, who was actually starting to use these tools. And he basically said, I know everything. I said to him, really? What were the values of the Spartans? And he asked the machine, and the machine told him they lost the war against the Persians. I said, that's not what I asked. So slowly, by taking him to 6 different questions, he basically understood that those people, those warriors, right, had ideals and moral values that basically determined why they would go to fight an army that was much bigger than them, right? So what I'm saying here as an example is while we're making this transition to start using this technology and this tool as an enabler for our lives, right? We need to, first of all, always be focused that we need to really be using the technology to create more value. If we can capture that value, that also means that people will have, I think, an improved quality of life. So for us in Cyprus, right, imagine that if we just bring AI to make our life easier, but our GDP is still at 35 billion, it means that then we have not achieved anything. But if we use this technology basically to take it, to double our GDP, right, and we all each take part of it, maybe that means that people will not retire at 67, they'll retire at 60. Maybe that means that people will retire with a higher, right? All of these things can only happen if we use technology to create value. Capturing that value is the next thing. This requires a change in mindset, but to be able to really be in control, we need to reinforce that the common things that we cannot compromise is creativity, critical thinking, judgment. It's okay to really focus on the values, and we need to teach people how to understand that and assess that what is correct or not, right? Because a machine can tell you, this is empty. Yes, but it's not fully empty, right? And if it's not fully empty, right, and you actually remove it, a customer may actually be offended because you're telling him, sorry, your time at the table is up. So all of these things, right, and how you actually create the policies, how you create what's normal mindset requires substantial change. And going back, this is where I'm saying is we have so much work to do to make this transformation. It's all about change management. It's all about re-looking at the processes. I think Ivan said it before. You look at the processes, you look at how AI thinks, you identify those gaps, and you reprogram that, right, in a way that basically that creates that. So for us, for our companies, right, it means that we have to co-design. And this is also what we have to do with our educational system. We have to go back and examine which amount of co-design requires to be here at each stage of the evolution. But it all starts by saying that learning doesn't stop at high school. It doesn't stop at universities. It is something that we need to switch our mindset, because as Ivan said before, if juniors that are basically finishing university find a hard time coming in because people with, I think, 10 to 15 years of experience that are using AI are more competitive, then we're going to have to think about how can we use this new energetic, let's say, piece of our ecosystem to really create that value for us. So really looking and redesigning the workplace in a way where we could use some of this value requires substantial investment in times, money, structure, strategy, and this is why this is a big opportunity. So concluding, right, I'll just stop by saying something. A year ago, people talked about AI being a $7 trillion opportunity by 2030. That's enough of a market and an opportunity for us to create amazing evolution in terms of quality in life, not for one country alone, but for all of the countries out there, right? Now, right, you hear people like Bill Gates who are saying that in the next 10 years, we're really going to start, having that capability to prolong, I think, life between 5 to 10 to 15 years. These things could be possible, but they require a very different mindset of thinking, right, as to how do you really bring all of this to benefit everybody, right? And that needs that education, it needs that ambition, it needs that the change in mindset. And this is why it's important when we talk about AI to take away, I think, what we call that fear, and to really look at the opportunity and how do you harness or minimize that risk.
Oh my God, Demetris, I can't stop listening you. Really, so many information, so many interesting thoughts. I'm just dissolving into all these insights. Look, online learning. Do you think online learning could be this kind of lifelong experience, that it could be bridge between AI skills, between this gap of knowledge on how to use what skills is needed, how these AI models can bring you, irrelevant information. Could online learning fill the gap and become this bridge for society to harness the best of AI?
I think we're too early in the journey to say if one technology or one type could be the ultimate, I think, winner here. But what I will say, however, I think that as we look at it right now, we see that all types of learnings, and particularly online learning, can actually act as a catalyst, right? So I think there are types of, let's say, technologies and types of, let's say, education that are still too complex to be able to convey to the mass public, right, online. I think there are others that are relatively a bit simpler, right? I think the work to be done is still to be fleshed out, but I think that what we are going to be looking at is there are different types of communities that need to be actually brought together to harness these technologies together and slowly make things much easier, right? So let me give you an example. When I was a kid, I think I was about 12 years old when I had my first computer. And I bought a card, a graphics card, right, and a sound card. And I wanted to actually put it onto the motherboard and to this. And when I opened it up, I was like lost in space by what I was seeing, right? Last week, I was actually invited to an organization that does STEM education for kids. And I saw children from 5 years old up to 17 years old that were actually building small trucks with, sensors, that were picking up tennis balls, they were climbing upstairs, they were going down, they were doing things. And I said, how is this possible? It's possible because now, right, we have platforms, we have kits, we have development tools that have abstracted that level of complexity, and you can use these three things and you can make this happen. So what's happening in the future is we are going into this world, we are already into this world where we have no code AI, ML, let's say, development, where that makes it much easier for, I think, many people to be able to do some of the complex, let's say, tasks. But what I'm saying is that there is no one form of AI. I mean, when you look at AI, you have computer vision, you have basically machine learning, you have neural algorithms and learning modules. You have such a complex, diverse area that not all of this can actually be taught and converted into practical knowledge very easily. So we are going to be seeing more online, let's say, platforms. This does not mean that we have to discount the impact of others. I think there is a very, very strong, let's say, mechanism that binds the two together. I think that online platforms may bring us faster this personalized capability or this assisted learning types, just like how Amazon brought us, that next best product that you want to build. But what I'm saying is that the most important thing starts with, I think, what we started this call with. It's called the community. When you have a community in place, and this community takes a proactive role into helping shape, right, that new technology and harness it, you can really start bringing together these different concepts moving them. And yes, online will be a very big part of it. I mean, we already spend more than 90% of our lives online, right? I mean, we once thought we were working 8 hours. Now we probably work 10 hours, 12 and 14 hours. And we don't understand it because your WhatsApp phone is ringing, right? Your Viber is there. Your Zoom call is always there. So online has even changed the way that we work, the way how we produce work, the way how we capture value. So online learning is de facto going to be there, and it's probably a fundamental basis. But the question is do we need online for everything? Because online also comes with another fundamental change, privacy, right? When you're always online, then you're relegating basically your entire, let's say, presence. And that presence then, right, is another question. So I think there are many questions that we still need to answer, think about. I would think that online is a very fundamental part of it, and I really am very excited. I see that many universities are offering, distance learning trainings. I see MOOCs offerings. I see, great assets like LinkedIn Learning that have really made things down. I see the webinars. All of these have tremendous value. But the question mark, right, is not if they're all there. The question is how can we take all of this and harness it faster? Because you can learn forever, but can you use what you're learning now? That's the big question. So thank you for the great question. I hope I answered your...
Yes. Thekla, the question goes to you. So now when you are hiring a team member, do you ask them on AI literacy? Do you test them on this? Do you check if they're able to work with AI agents? Did you change your recruiting process? No.
We didn't change our recruitment process in terms to check about AI literature, but what we did change is we changed what we need. So we don't ask about education, which university, which courses, but we want to see experience. We want engineers on my department. I don't want developers. What is the difference of engineer and developer? Developer does what it said. AI can do that. I can tell them what I need and they're gonna do. I need engineers. What is the difference? I need them to think, to understand business, what, why, and how to make it better. I don't care if they're using AI or any other tool. I want a critical thinking human being that will be able to assess, be able to understand the problem, and find the best solution for the problem. And if they can be using AI to build it faster, but correct with critical thinking and not overcomplicating, because this is where you see the critical thinking. AI, if you don't know what to put for the result, can be overcomplicating, too many things. While it might be 2 lines of code, can give you 200 lines of code. So this is where you check if they can work with AI. If they're working with AI, they have the critical thinking of what input, output they're expecting, and to understand the problem. So we want people that they ask the questions and not only do. So they challenge us back. Why should I do that? What would be the benefit for the company? Why are we doing this? We might need to scale it better, or in the future we do it this way, it will be easier to adapt, have a new service, etc. So this is what we are challenging, and this is the people that we are trying to find.
But this is very strong comment that you're not checking the university, you don't care of all the online learning certificates or whatever. So what would be your advice to our young listeners who are studying hard in the university, who want to take internship, who are scared that AI will not allow them actually to get this early experience in order to work at Payable, for example?
So it's keep learning, because this is how, unfortunately, this is a way of how to build the critical thinking. If you don't learn things, it's not possible to understand if it's something correct or not.
So university is still
Not only
important?
university. No, not only university. You can do it through online courses, through certificates, through boot camps. So what I'm advising them is to get experience. Get hands-on experience.
How? Is it like internship
Yes,
opportunities? Where?
internship,
Startups?
boot camps, startups. With any opportunity that you have, get on hands-on experience. Even certificates can be part of hands-on experience because you need to have labs, you need to solve real-time problems. So not only focus on the theory, but on the actual doing.
May I just add one, I think, one area, and sorry to hijack, I think, the conversation. One of the things that I mean, I worked with both the lady and the gentleman, I think, and what I love about both of them that I think could be a recipe that others can actually replicate is that every time we've discussed about the challenge, it wasn't that, Chief, we have this solution or that solution, it would work. It was always about what's the problem we want to solve? What does the customer want? And I think that's what the differentiator brings right now. So you have education, you have online trainings, you have certifications that build the basis. But right now, to be able to harness this opportunity at the rate that it is coming, because it's coming very fast, right? You need to be able to understand that customer and to work backwards from the customer and really make, I think, make things happen. And that's what makes the AI engineers more important. That's what makes the programmers more important. That's what will make the strategists more important, is the level that they can really understand. And that's where this opportunity to have those internships and the people who can mentor or act as coaches for the young generation to start thinking this customer-centric way of thinking, right? Remember, in the early, I remember I went to school late 97, 98, and Amazon was just starting, and it was just a bookstore. And it became an entire disruptive force. Today, you have Kindles, you have Audibles, you have, I mean, I'm going to get into the car to go back to Nicosia and I'm going to hear a nice conversation with, any one of these, famous people that you have, because it helps me understand a very different way of thinking, a very different frame of thinking. So I would say, building on what Thekla was saying before, is competency and capability comes ingrained from the university, from the certificates, from the diplomas, from the online training. But that additional level is to be able to know how to teach yourself how to learn, how to unlearn, and how to walk backwards from the customer. And that, I think, personally is I think the magic solution that will take us from this part to that part of the bridge.
I have a question on this. So basically, it's two-scale question. One is I was growing up with a mathematician father, and his belief was always that you need to study something at the university, that it's a basic study. So math, language, engineering, and then start learning and adding up from there. I assume this is what more or less would be the protocol moving forward based on what you're saying. But I think one of the most difficult things about lifelong learning at the moment is that the attention span has been becoming smaller and smaller. So, as you said, you're going to go in the car and you're going to listen and learn from that. But newer generations are losing this. So how can we help them to continue to learn? Are there any other methods? Is it micro-learning? What is...
It's difficult. This is what the challenges for government and education is, to how to change things and promote critical thinking and the continued learning. Because unfortunately for the kids, everything now it's on the plate, it's ready-made, it's available for them. So we need to challenge them. We need to ask the question as the older generation. We need to challenge them, ask the right question in order to guide them and for them to start thinking and asking back. And I mean, I'm not sure, is it okay? Can I open a book and check it? Can I check another resource? Because how I see it younger generations, what they do, I mean, they're not opening anymore Google to ask something. They're asking ChatGPT.
So going back to this, I think there is one member of the task force, Professor Hadji Christofis, is actually building a very nice platform, and he's actually demonstrated it to doctors. It's called Socratic AI, an approach where basically the machine doesn't give you the answer, but it asks you back, right? And it basically helps you move forward. I think what we need to harness and accept is that if we don't encourage the younger generations to understand that technology is the most valuable, knowledge is the most valuable asset that you take with you as you move forward to the next life, and learning how to learn and unlearn needs to be mastered. We are not going to prepare them for what's next, right? Because again, we are at an era right now where the rate of technology has moved so fast. And when all of, we're looking at, the disruptive force of changing, let's say, jobs or some of the roles to be done, this automation or hyper automation, etc. We need to prepare them that, things are not as simple as you just move this to here and you get, pocket money. It doesn't work like that. So the ability in getting them to really understand that it's encouraging, very good to invest in STEM. We need to build that, right? Because as your father said, right, maybe you can find a deviation, but if you are a very good mathematician or a statistician, you can start understanding a lot of the elements of AI. Now it's then a choice. Do you become an AI engineer, or do you go to something different? Or do you love mathematics but you want to be creative and you want to run your own marketing agency, right? But helping them see, I think that the way to really increase the span of learning is to help them see these opportunities. And one of the things that I really, really like about artificial intelligence is that it can even empower one-man companies to have an assistant, to have like a micro creative, or let's say assistant that can help them do that. So once you show people that the possibilities that this technology or learning can create, then you create, I think, that passion. I think that's where we possibly need to invest a bit more effort to really understand and find out what the solution is. I must admit, we don't have the solution yet. We're thinking a lot, right? But I think it takes all of us to be able to navigate this.
You remember when we had a podcast conversation with guys from Foodie? One of the co-founders said that he envisions that next unicorns will be built by teams of 10 people, and then maybe even with team of 1 with help of AI. So maybe this really is our future. But also, adding to what you said about the short attention span, I think it's also the volume of the content, volume of the information that sometimes, especially in the post-learning, when you finished universities, whatever, and you are into the era of upskilling and reskilling, what to learn and how to choose, let's say, this next best course or area or topic which will help you to go up on the ladder. It's also quite a challenge, especially when you're working parent, whatever, I mean, busy adult.
And remain employable, right?
Remain employable, yes. So maybe, Ivan, you have some suggestions, maybe how to use AI and what questions to ask AI and in order to choose the right path for your future in this new era?
This is a very good and very specific question that I would like to maybe broaden out a little bit, especially for all of our viewers who potentially could be younger generation as well. It's very important to remember that we only have one life and eventually it will end. And what we decide to do with this life is a very difficult choice to make. And the only optimal choice for what to do with our life is what we enjoy, truly. Because we will never get a chance to redo, and some people are lucky enough to get another chance and maybe reinvent themselves. But nothing will give you a better impetus at learning and driving you forward than liking what you do. This is the truth. I think all of us here at the table, we're all very lucky to work in industries, work in professions and the sectors that we like, admire, appreciate. And for us, it's difficult to answer these questions because for me, learning feels like a hobby. For Demetris as well, he just mentioned that instead of listening to music on the way back to Nicosia, he's going to be listening to interviews, podcasts, learning and discovering, etc. So loving what you do is extremely important. And the way our society is developing, it's taking us to a point where we will be getting the opportunities to do what we love more and more. Perhaps, like we're saying, if we want to find for the younger generation their way to bring back value, perhaps it's following their passions. Maybe it's becoming the next great playwright, maybe becoming a great actor or a movie director, because they will be able to do that instead of going into, for example, I don't know, for lack of a word, software development, which they don't have passion to, but their parents say, learn IT, you have to go in there because you need to have a future. But whatever you do, the most important thing is, the life that you're yearning for is behind a wall of failures. We all have failed many, many times to get to where we are. And it's not a scary thing. All you need to do is just to dare to try. And there's no better way to learn than just by doing, failing, and doing again, failing a little bit less, then doing again, and finally getting and breaking through. So join the boot camps, go to hackathons. That's a great place where you have to perform under pressure. You're going to learn a lot and you're going to look around and you're going to see what's happening. Just get out there, talk to people and do, and don't be afraid to fail. Pride is the biggest thing that can hold us back. If we just stop ourselves from action, just not to be embarrassed, we will get nowhere. So get embarrassed, trip, fall, get back up, and then you're going to be the unicorn of one who will, on their 10th, 15th, 20th attempt, become the next big thing, if that's what you want.
I will add to your thoughts, actually, this conversation which we had with ladies before start of this podcast. And this is an insight we just recently learned in another podcast of Mel Robbins, because I'm also listening podcasts while I'm driving back and forth, that sometimes you just need to pick something what is very easy for you and then put a lot of effort in this. This is such an opener for me, because I also share this view: do what you love, but sometimes you love something what is not easy for you, and you're putting hard effort, you're trying, and then you're not achieving the result. If you would just choose something what is easy, put a lot of effort there, and maybe this will just fly. Maybe you want to
Exactly. This is what I wanted to say. Because we had that discussion actually before the podcast, how I came here on this position. And what I was telling is I was meant to be an accountant, not in technology. I loved mathematics, I love logistics and everything. But I was good in logic, I was good in mathematics, I was good in solving problems. So I did have a teacher saying, look, you're good, you're natural in this, just take the lesson, it's an easy 20 for you. But what the teacher did is every time he was challenging me more, a more complex problem, a more complex things to solve. So these, as a nature of mine, make me want to do more and more and more. And this is when I realized that, it's not gonna be easy, but I'm good at this. It's easy for me, but I would challenge myself more and get more results and get more results. So even after university, I would never stay on a position or a company that I don't feel the challenge to solve something, the challenge to produce something. So this is what drives me. It's my driver. That's why I was able to learn more, study more, understand business more, because this is through technology. I can solve problems. I can solve problems of the business, problems of the customers. So when I realized that this is my driver, as a person, I used the tools and still using the tools I'm learning in order to keep my driver up every morning, the morning to come at work. So for the younger generation and for everyone, it's like, pick what you're good at, pick what you like, and then do not relax. You need to evolve, you need to learn, you need to do things. And for sure, the road will not be full of roses. Okay, you have obstacles, we're gonna have issues. This is what I'm saying to my 6-year-old. He loves gymnastics. So I'm like, look, you're gonna fail, you're gonna be on the ground, but the strength is to get up and try. Next time you will be better. Next time you will be better until you reach the goal that you set for yourself. So we are the ones that we are putting limits on ourselves. So going back on the conversation that we have about the podcast is where we see AI, we shouldn't see it as enemy, but how to make our life easier, how to achieve our goals, how to have new goals, new, more complex goals, and how to use this tool to achieve them.
Guys, before we close, I'm going to ask you to finish one by one to finish this sentence. In 10 years, the people who succeed will be those who, Ivan?
In 10 years, the people who will succeed will be those who tried.
I would say it's the ones that they think, because if we lose thinking, then it's not a success.
I would say that in 10 years, the people who will succeed are those who will at least try to take a piece of this new technology and work with it, achieving at least 1 to 2 new capabilities per year. That would create, I think, substantial value. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's try to at least take on an annual basis, if not a monthly basis, 1 to 2 elements and develop that skills. And that would leave them, I think, with maybe 10, maybe 5, maybe 1, maybe 2 superpower capabilities that at least will be much better than what we have today.
Thank you. This was really inspiring, insightful. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in, and a big thank you for Payable for hosting us. And see you at the next episode of the TechIsland podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.